Mystery of the Burke and Hare murder dolls. In 1836, 3 boys were out hunting for rabbit holes and found a puzzling group of 17 dolls in a small niche near the rocky structure called Arthur's Seat at Holyrood Park. Oddly, each doll lay securely in its own coffin. Later, people named them the Burke and Hare murder dolls because they assumed the strange figurines were related to the 17 murder victims of William Burke and William Hare in Edinburgh, Scotland, during the late 1820s. However, whether or not this was true, and who made the dolls and hid them in the nook, or why, is still a mystery. Discovery of the Burke and Hare murder dolls. As the boys looked for rabbit burrows, they spotted a strange opening about 1 foot wide and 1 foot deep in the rocky hillside. A few pieces of slate stones were stuffed into the opening and protected the coffins from the weather. Initially, the Burke and Hare murder dolls, also known as the Lilliputian coffins and the fairy coffins, didn't appear to be anything special. Even the children who found them did not realize their value. The youngsters supposedly pitched the dolls at one another and destroyed about half of them. Only 8 unopened coffins made it down from the hillside, which sat about 820 feet high overlooking the city of Edinburgh. Descriptions of the dolls and coffins. The number of dolls appeared to represent the bodies sold to Dr. Knox, including the one that died of natural causes. Dating of the fabrics used for the burial cloths and the threads places their origins around the same time as the murders. However, whoever made the dolls and stashed them may have done so numerous times between 1800 and 1830. According to author Charles Fort, someone had placed the dolls and their coffins one by one in the cave in 3 levels. The bottom level of 8 had the most decomposition in the coffins and their contents. The next level up, consisting of another row of 8 dolls, was in slightly better shape. There was only 1 doll on the upper level. This one seemed the newest and led many people to believe that more dolls would have followed in that row at some future time. Related, Burke and Hare, murderous merchants in the fresh cadaver market. Most people assume the varying degrees of decomposition reflect different times of placement. However, it is possible that some dolls may have been more exposed to weathering than others. Analysis of the figurines indicates that they probably started out as toys or something other than corpses. None of the figures had closed eyes, and they all had black feet as if they were wearing boots. One figure had its arms removed before it could be fit into its coffin. Apparently, someone then repurposed the figures into corpses after building the coffins. Report in the Scotsman. According to Mike Dash from Smithsonian, the Scotsman newspaper reported that each coffin. The coffins were made from Scots pine. There are some inconsistencies about their construction. Therefore, experts believe 2 different people may have created them. The maker carved out 1 solid piece of wood for the coffin and then placed another piece on top for the lid. Brief story of Burke and Hare. As their name suggests, the Burke and Hare murder dolls are related to the sinister deeds of 2 men, William Burke and William Hare. Both were Irishmen who met in Scotland and became close friends in the 1820s. Hare ran a boarding house with his wife. There, one of the tenants died of natural causes. Burke and Hare sold the body of the man to a doctor at Edinburgh University for use as a medical school cadaver. At the time, the medical schools had a shortage of bodies to use for dissection. They were only allowed to use executed criminals. The problem was, however, that criminals were facing execution less frequently. To supplement their needs, anatomists began purchasing corpses from body snatchers. Edinburgh's underground city, Dr. Knox, of the University of Edinburgh, relied on Burke and Hare to furnish his anatomy school with plenty of fresh cadavers. After they sold the deceased tenant's body for £7, a significant amount in those days, Burke and Hare realized that they could make a sizable living in corpses. Future fresh corpses went for £10. After 17 victims, police caught the duo, and Hare made a deal to turn King's evidence in exchange for his freedom. He testified against Burke, who died by execution, and in a morbid twist of fate, the judge sentenced him to public dissection. Anatomists saved several of his body parts, including a death mask of his face. Hare walked. No one knows what happened to him. Theories about the murder dolls. One theory is that one of the murderers may have felt such guilt about the victims who never got a proper funeral that he made coffins and gave the victims a symbolic burial. Others theorize that they represent sailors lost at sea or that Celtic magic or voodoo rituals were their true purpose. If someone made the Burke and Hare murder dolls before the murders became public knowledge, only a handful of people could have carved them. There was Dr. Knox, who likely knew the corpses he was purchasing were murder victims. There were Burke and Hare, Hare's wife, and Burke's wife. Dr. Knox's brother possibly knew as well. One of these people could have made the dolls out of guilt or for religious reasons. Alternatively, one of the killers could have made them as souvenirs and stashed them in the cave. Theoretically, Hare could have made them after Burke's murder trial and put them there as well. However, he fled town rather quickly to avoid the angry public. Some theorists suggest that Burke couldn't have made the dolls since they were 17, and he would not have had the time after police found their last victim. The arrest happened too quickly for him to stash the last doll. However, it is possible that Burke and Hare actually had an additional victim. If this is the case, he may have stashed the last figurine before police stopped them. People who knew Burke claimed that he was a very religious man. Although scientists collected DNA from Burke's body, they were unable to acquire DNA from the dolls and look for a match. The main issue with the theory that the dolls resulted from the Burke and Hare murders, also called the Westport murders, is that at least 12 of their victims were women. The figurines are clearly all male wearing men's burial attire. Emery 2014. If someone placed them in the niche to give a group of people a proper burial, was it due to some disaster in which people perished? Author Jeff Nisbet believes they resulted from the populist uprising radical war of 1820. Rather than the Burke and Hare murder dolls, he calls them the Arthur's Seat coffins. He states, authenticity of the dolls. Many people have accepted that the figurines and their coffins are genuine. However, there are those who believe they are a hoax. None of the children gave any first-hand testimony about them. What happened to the other 9 dolls? When the boys realized that people seemed interested in the wooden objects, wouldn't they have gone back to find the remains of the other figurines up on the hillside? Not knowing the truth adds one more dimension to the mystery. According to Smithsonian, the boys' schoolmaster acquired the set. He then took it to his archaeological society, and the set amazed the group. Oddly, it wound up under the ownership of a jeweler, who displayed the objects in his personal museum until he retired and sold the set at auction for £4 around 1845. Private collectors maintained the Burke and Hare murder dolls for the remainder of the century. In 1901, Christina Coeur donated the